All right, here we go. We have a story tonight. It's been a long time since we done one, since we read a story online for a bedtime story, but we're due. Also, was kind of looking at it and think we're actually pretty close to having the whole story, the whole library up for all of these books. I think there might only be a couple that are left to read. So getting closer to being done, which is great. Tonight's story is I'm sorry, I'll always kind of start with an explanation of what we're doing here. Really, this is just sort of an opportunity to document some of these books that I read when I was a kid, and my family, sisters, all that, everyone kind of read when we were kids. And it's just a value tales kind of deal where these books are about a historical figure who embodied a certain characteristic or value, something that was important to them that kind of guided their life and what they did with their life. And so these books, what we can tell are anywhere from 42 to 35 to 42 years old. They've been around a while. And so it's just nice to be able to, reconcile them to a place, on the internet. They're bedtime stories. I don't know how soothing or relaxing my voice is for bedtime, but it's kind of cool to read these books to my kids. Again, I got these books when I was a kid and read them when I was a kid. My mom likely read them to me when I was a kid. So, it's really kind of fun. So tonight's story is The Value of Giving. This is the story of Beethoven. And this one was copyright written, all of that, in 1979. So 1979 is a great year. It's 40 years ago. There are some really important and influential people in the world that were born in 1979. Also, I happen to have been born in 1979. So I have a question from the Peanut Gallery. For some reason, we have a child with their hand up, and they should be in bed, but they're not. So, yes, Lucas, did you have a question? Uh-huh.
I think there might be have we done Alexander Graham Bell online?
It's a good question, Lucas. Not one that I can answer right now. We'll have to look into it, okay? Yeah, we're close, but we'll look into it, okay?
There's another girl I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's a girl we have.
Okay, well, we'll look into that another time, all right?
Okay.
Okay, thanks for bringing it up, and, we'll kind of look into it. So, boys, are we ready for bed? Okay, we're ready for the story. All right. So, this book is The Value of Giving, the story of Beethoven. Once upon a time, long, long ago, in the German city of Bonn, a little boy was born to a couple named Beethoven. "It's almost Christmas time," said the child's mother, Maria, as she held the baby close. "What a wonderful present we have. Isn't he beautiful?" But the baby's father, Jan, Jan, German, it's probably Jan. We'll go with Jan for the rest of this book. Could be wrong. If I'm wrong, whatever. Jan von Beethoven wasn't nearly so happy. He's an ugly baby, if you ask me, said Jan, and he went off to join his friends at the tavern. Never mind, Maria whispered to the little one. I think you're a lovely baby. Just then, Jan's father came bustling into the room. Wonderful, wonderful, he cried when he saw his new grandson. You mark my words, Maria, this boy will be a fine musician some day. Maria smiled. Like you, she said, and like his father? Grandfather Beethoven looked unhappy then. He did not like to think too much about Jan. Jan could have been a marvelous singer, but he wasted his days at the tavern with his ne'er-do-well friends. Maria had named the baby Ludwig after his grandfather, and as time went by, she gave him the things a good mother gives to her child. She gave him tenderness and care and love. Soon Maria noticed that Ludwig wasn't quite like other little boys. He heard things that most children never noticed. He clapped his hands with delight when the church bells rang out. He laughed at the murmur the river Rhine made as it flowed past the city. One day, when Maria was busy with her housework, little Ludwig found the front door open. He looked out at the narrow cobbled street that ran past his house. I wonder what's at the end of the street, said Ludwig to himself, and he decided to go and see. He trotted out the door and down the street, and he walked and walked until he came to an open field. It was beautiful in the field and very peaceful. Ludwig sat down in a soft grassy spot and he listened. He heard birds singing. He heard wind rustling the leaves of the trees. He heard a faint tinkling of cowbells off in the distance. Ludwig was very young, of course, but he already knew about music, and it seemed to him that all the music in the world must have started with the sounds of nature. The sounds of wind stirring green leaves and of birds singing. Okay. While his mother gave Ludwig love and tenderness, his grandfather gave him some wonderful adventures. Every day, the old man and the child explored the city of Bonn. And on one very special day, grandfather took Ludwig to the chapel where the archbishop went to pray. It's very beautiful, said Ludwig when they were inside. Yes, it is, said grandfather, but you mustn't talk in church. It's forbidden. Grandfather then led Ludwig to a seat and they waited, and suddenly the church was filled with a most wonderful sound. Grandfather, what is it? Whispered Ludwig. It's the organ, his grandfather answered. Just then a rich tenor voice sang out. And that is your father, said Grandfather Beethoven. His voice was sad, for the thought of his son idling away his life in the tavern always made him bitter. He could be a great musician, said the grandfather, if only he weren't such a wastrel. Oh, as Ludwig grew bigger, he and his grandfather often went far beyond the streets of the city. They took long, rambling walks through the fields and the valleys around Bonn. And they talked about nature. Yes, sir. Okay. Well, leave it out in the air. Okay? And take some breaths. You're fine. Sometimes, when they were tired of walking, they rowed a boat down the river Rhine. Will we always be together? Ludwig asked his grandfather. Will you always take me to see wonderful things and to listen to beautiful music? Grandfather didn't answer, and before long a day came that was different from any Ludwig had known. Ludwig was playing by himself when he realized that the house was very quiet. Something's the matter, said the boy. Mother has gone out somewhere, and grandfather hasn't come to take me for our walk. I'll go to grandfather's house. Perhaps mother is there. Indeed, when Ludwig reached the cottage where his grandfather lived, his mother was there. His father was there too, and he looked very serious. Poor little fellow, said his mother. She put her arms around Ludwig. Your grandfather has died, she told him. After that, Ludwig was very lonely. He still walked in the fields and listened to the birds singing, but it was not the same now. I wish grandfather were still here, thought Ludwig. Perhaps if I had a little friend, it would help. One day, Ludwig couldn't go to the fields because it was raining. He wandered through the house and came across a curious box that his father had brought home. I wonder what's in it, said Ludwig to himself. He looked around to see if anyone was watching. Then he lifted the lid, and out hopped a strange little cat. A cat who laughed and capered and told Ludwig that his name was Keys. Just like the keys on a piano, said the cat, or the keys on this instrument. Ludwig was delighted. His wish had come true. He had a little playmate. I know I made you up, he told the cat, but I'm going to keep you as my friend. I need a friend. Indeed you do, said the cat. And now that that's settled, why don't you try this instrument? So Ludwig touched the keys on the instrument, and the room was filled with beautiful sounds. It's wonderful, cried Ludwig. When I play at one end, it sounds like birds chirping. At the other end, it sounds like thunder. But then Ludwig heard someone behind him. He turned around and began to tremble. Who do you suppose was there? It was Ludwig's father, standing in the doorway. Poor Ludwig was terrified. I'm sorry, father, he said. I just wondered what was in the box you brought home, and such beautiful sounds came out when I touched the keys that I couldn't stop. For once, Jan von Beethoven didn't shout or scold. That is called a clavier, he said quietly, and he sat down and began to play. Ludwig listened. At first, the music gave him a peaceful feeling. Then it grew livelier, and it excited him, and sometimes it made him feel sad. When Jan stopped playing, he turned to Ludwig. Would you like to learn how to do it, he asked. Could I really? Cried Ludwig. I don't see why not, said Jan. I will teach you. Ludwig's mother came home that day and found Jan teaching Ludwig to play the clavier. Look, mother, cried Ludwig, father's giving me lessons. Oh, that's grand, cried his mother. Jan, it warms my heart to see you giving your time to your son. Jan smiled a secret smile. He was thinking of a young musician named Mozart, who had become a famous pianist and composer at the age of 9. Mozart was a child prodigy, and he made lots of money, thought Jan. I will make sure that Ludwig becomes a prodigy too, and he can make money for me. Poor little Ludwig. His father was not the giving sort. Quite the opposite. Jan von Beethoven intended to take all that he could from his child. Ludwig learned quickly. Every time the boy played, Jan dreamed of the money Ludwig might make. Soon he was forcing Ludwig to practice long hours. Please, father, said Ludwig one day, I love music, but I'm tired right now. Can I rest for a bit? You can rest when we're rich, shouted his father. Right now you can practice. And he brought a stick down on Ludwig's hand. Jan, stop, cried Ludwig's mother. You'll hurt him. He'll be a great musician, shouted Jan. He'll make heaps of money. Now stop sniveling, Ludwig. To work. In spite of the shouting and the rages and the weariness, Ludwig did love the music. When his father wasn't at home, he sometimes played just for himself and keys. In a few years, Ludwig had learned everything that his father could teach him, and he began to make a little money playing in the homes of the wealthy people of Bonn. It wasn't much, he told Keys, but it gives me a chance to play in front of people. And if father doesn't spend it all at the tavern, perhaps I can buy some nice things for mother. Ludwig was about 10 when his father came home one night and taught and brought a friend with him. The man's name was Tobias, and he had once been a great musician in Frankfurt. Tobias was like Jan, however. He spent too much time at the tavern. Get up, Ludwig, believed Jan. Tobias has come to hear you play. Ludwig didn't argue when his father shouted that way. He tumbled out of bed, and so did Keys. Very good, said Tobias when he heard Ludwig play. The boy has talent. I will give him lessons. And Tobias began to teach Ludwig. Tobias was a better musician than Jan and a finer teacher, but he never started his lessons with Ludwig until the tavern was closed. Then he came roaring in, and Jan made Ludwig get out of bed and play for him. Be brave, Ludwig, whispered Keys. Forget that you are sleepy. Just think of the music, and it will be all right. Ludwig's mother cried when Jan shouted out the boy, but she couldn't stop her husband. She couldn't do much about her two younger sons either. They liked to tease Ludwig about his looks. They told him that he was ugly and that dogs barked at him when he walked down the street. Don't pay any attention, said Keys. Looks aren't important. When you become a great musician, that is what people will see. Only your greatness. Ludwig tried to believe what Keys said to him, and before long he had such a stroke of luck that he thought it might really come true. An excellent musician named Christian Gottlob Neef heard Ludwig play, and he was impressed. You show promise, said Neef. You still have much to learn, of course. I will give you lessons, and I would like to teach you to compose. I have already composed some little pieces, said Ludwig, and he played them for Neef. Excellent, said Neef. In time, you should be really good. Ludwig was delighted, and so was Keys. Of course, Ludwig enjoyed the company of his small friend, so he kept the little cat with him while he practiced every day. He no longer practiced at home on the clavier. Now he played the organ in a church, and Keys was there the day Neef came to announce that Ludwig was to play for the elector. Now, in those days, the elector wasn't quite as important as a king or an emperor, but he was important. It was the ruler of the area where Ludwig lived, and when Ludwig heard that he was to go to court and play for this man, he was terribly excited. Mother, I cannot believe it, he said. I'm so nervous. You'll do well, said his mother. I know you will. Even Ludwig's father was pleased. At last, he thought Ludwig would be well known, and he would make lots of money. So Jan bought Ludwig a fine satin coat, and he sent the boy to court. Ludwig was dazzled at first. He saw the chandeliers sparkling overhead and the mirrors everywhere. He saw the elegant people crowding in the ballroom and the elector sitting in the front of the audience. Oh, Keys, he whispered, my legs are shaking. I don't think I can walk to the clavier. Of course you can walk to the clavier, said Keys. Just think of the music. You never fail when you think only of the music. Ludwig went to the instrument. He sat down and his hands were trembling when he began to play, but once he heard the notes coming from the elector's marvelous clavier, which was so much better than the old one at home, Ludwig forgot to be nervous. Keys was right. Ludwig could not fail when he forgot everyone and everything but the music. There was silence for an instant when Ludwig finished playing. Then the audience began to applaud. Bravo, bravo, cried the courtiers. You did it, cried Keys. Ludwig, you did it. Look, even the elector is clapping. I've been so fortunate, said Ludwig to Keys when the great day was over. People have given me so much. Lessons, a place to practice, a place to play at court. Keep working, said Keys, and someday you will have a chance to repay all those gifts. So Ludwig went on practicing and composing. Then one day, Neef arrived with the word that he was to play the clavier in the court orchestra. It doesn't pay much, said Neef, but it's a great honor. Honor? Shouted Jan van Beethoven when Ludwig told him the news. Who cares about honor? Money. That's what counts. But it's a great opportunity, cried Ludwig. Ugly fellows like you need every opportunity that comes their way, said his brothers. Never mind, Ludwig, said his mother. You are not ugly, and you must go ahead and take the position. I'm proud of you. Ludwig did take the position, and soon he was made assistant court organist, which paid more. But Ludwig didn't want to stay in Bonn forever, not even as court organist. There's still so much I don't know, he told Keys. I want to go to Vienna and study with the great masters. Ludwig began to save what money he could, and when he was 17, he took all that he had saved and some money he borrowed, and he told his mother that he was going to Vienna. That's a wonderful, Ludwig, said his mother. She wanted him to have his chance to be a great musician, but she would miss him very much. She tried not to show that she was sad as he set off for Vienna, carrying a letter from the elector to the great composer Mozart. Not many people get a chance to play for Mozart, said Keys, for of course the cat went to Vienna too. I am a very lucky man, said Ludwig. I am also a very nervous young man. How we doing, boys? Very well, sir, said Mozart when Ludwig presented himself and his letter. Let me hear what you do. What you can do. Ludwig sat down at the piano and he began to play, and it was like his performance at court the moment the music began. Ludwig forgot to be nervous. You play well, said Mozart when Ludwig finished. I would like you to stay in Vienna. I would like to teach you. Mozart not only taught Ludwig, he also saw to it that the boy met other musicians. Ludwig had a wonderful time talking to gifted people and going to fine concerts. One day I'll bring my mother to Vienna, Ludwig told Keys. I'll take her to see the sights and I'll give her all sorts of beautiful things. You should, said Keys. Look at everything she's given you. But even while Ludwig was dreaming of the fine time he would have with his mother, a letter arrived at the inn where he was staying. Ludwig opened the letter and felt a great sadness. My mother is very ill, he told Keys. I must go home right away. Ludwig hurried back to Bonn, and not long after he arrived, his mother died. Now, for the first time in his life, music failed to comfort Ludwig. His mother had been the one person who had always given him love, and now she was gone. Ludwig went to the cathedral to practice every day, but he went as if he were walking in his sleep. On his way, he passed a beautiful garden filled with the flowers and trees, and sometimes he and Keys sat there and rested and thought of his mother. Ludwig was sitting in the garden one day when he heard a soft voice say, Is something the matter? Ludwig turned to see a lady standing in the garden. You look so sad, said the lady. My name is Frau von Breuning, and this is my garden. Tell me what's troubling you. The lady looked kind, so Ludwig told her about his mother. I understand, said Frau de Breuning. My dear husband passed away not long ago, and I felt a great sadness. Why don't you come and meet my children and stay for supper with us? Ludwig was happy not to have to go home to his own cheerless house. He was glad to meet Frau von Breuning's 4 children, and he was pleased that they seemed to take a liking to him. "Welcome, Ludwig," they cried, and they showed him into the dining room. "What nice people," said Keys, who watched as they laughed and chatted during supper. Ludwig had not been so happy since he left Vienna, and when Frau von Breuning heard that he was a musician, she insisted that he play for them. Ludwig did play, and for the first time in months, he felt joyful about his music. "Ah," said Keys, "that sounds like my friend Ludwig again." "How very beautiful," said Frau von Breuning, as she and her children offered Ludwig their friendship, a friendship that was to last a lifetime. Well, are we asleep, boys? We're asleep. I can't. I'm done. It's a good book, but we're going to call an audible here and let it be for tonight. It's 25 minutes. Not super long, but I'm done too. I need to go to bed. So, good night, all. We'll finish this another time. It's a good one.